where morning glory vines are twining round my door. Oh, how I wish I were there again down.
So here's my old Remington 700 ADL that was all beat to heck. It looked terrible. It had a clear coat sprayed on it that was chipping off, barbed wire scratches, pieces missing. It was a mess. But now it's nice. It's been redone correctly with boiled linseed oil, and we did expand upon the checkering job, and we even added some fleur-de-lis and some ribbons. So what's the first thing we have to do when we get an old nasty stock in and we decide we're going to go ahead and refurbish it and maybe even do some new checkering and carving?
First thing we're going to do is do any repair to serious damage and refinish it, which starts with scraping off and removing the old finish, applying a new finish properly, and letting it, of course, age and cure before we're ready to continue.
Okay, so what if I brought in a stock that had been severely damaged? Let's say, in addition to all those things I just listed, let's say this thing was broke in half or something, or had like a serious crack in it. What would we do?
Well, if it's a clean break, where it's actually broken in half, and I've done a few of these, where the gun was actually broke right in half through the pistol grip, simply glue it back together with a good Elmer's Carpenter's wood glue. And this wood glue solution works great if it's a true break, where you have two perfectly mated surfaces. You just put them back together, they fit perfect, but you just put a little glue on both of them and then clamp them nice and tight till it's dry, and make sure, of course, it's aligned as you do it. Of course, you have an irregular break going through a gun stock. That's a tough thing to clamp, and you don't want to mar it with a metal clamp. So the way to clamp it is with something soft, and the best thing I found is just a cloth, a towel or something, that you can wrap around it, tie a knot, and then you stick a stick in there and then give it some twists as you would a tourniquet.
Okay.
And get it as tight as you can, and then anchor that stick, tape it or tie it to the stock so it doesn't unwind, and set it aside gently someplace where it can stay there till it's thoroughly dry.
So I'm not going to want to get out my iron clamp or my normal carpentry clamps and just go to town trying to hold it together after we apply the glue. Now, do you need to, how heavily do you need to apply this glue into a crack?
You just want to pretty thoroughly try to get at least 80-85% of the surface of one side a light coating, that you can just basically butter it on fairly lightly. You don't have to try to scrape it all off. I mean, leave a little bit excess. Some of the excess, if it's really tight mated surface like it should be, will squeeze out the seam. And of course, some people right away wipe it off. Best to leave it until it's dry and then scrape it off. If you wipe it off, while it's wet, you're pushing it into the pores, and now you've got glue in the pores that's not going to want to accept oil or stain or whatever. So if it's totally dry, and then you can just gently scrape it off, you have a much cleaner seam. Now, after that's done, you sometimes will have small little sliver-like pieces on the edge where a piece of the wood is actually lost in the break. And for that, and for only really small repairs, these melt-in shellac sticks are a wonder.
A melting shellac stick?
Melt-in shellac sticks.
Oh, melt-in shellac stick. Okay.
And when you order a set of these, you order usually with it an iron. It only takes 300 degrees. So this only goes up to 300 degrees, which is just right for the shellac stick. And once it's hot, you simply touch it to it and it instantly melts on the thing. And you butter it right across the hole or the scratch. And it's a little sloppy to work with because as you butter it, of course, some is getting smeared on the surface. Don't worry about that. Just watch the hole until the hole is level full. When you're done, you can usually take your fingernail and them slight little dribbles around the edges that got smeared on will flake off with your thumbnail.
Okay.
You can actually scrape it up. And or, of course, a light sanding over it will take it right off. But it'll be glossy like the finished wood. So, and again, you're at only partway through the stock, and the rest of the stock is dull. Again, don't worry about it, because once you oil the stock, it comes glossy. The gloss matches the shellac stick. And if you for some reason didn't want it glossy, once you oil it and brought it to high gloss, you can rough it up with steel wool to give it a matte finish, and that'll rough up the shellac stick along with the finish.
Okay, so you can get it to match later on. You're going to want to choose the color as close as you can, I presume.
Right. And it doesn't look like there's, well, there's actually 2 layers here, I should show. Of choices, we have a very light, which would probably work good on birch or possibly maple. And there's a whole other selection of wood colors here.
Okay.
But you just take it out, hold it against the wood near the area you want repaired, and see how well it blends or matches with it.
Now, do you use different color shellac if you have different color grains and you have a large piece missing?
You don't want to do large piece repairs with this. It is only for really small pieces. A small little long slit works good, or like a nail hole sized thing that work about right.
So not like thicker than a 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch, or?
Yeah, I'm 16th maybe even. I mean, these are for the small repairs.
Okay.
You get something a little bigger than that, you start getting a 1/4 inch, you want to repair it with wood. And that, you try to always rob a piece of wood from the original stock as your first choice. Or if you have another old stock laying around, or old piece of black walnut, the same species, and then try to match one that has the same color as well.
Where's a good spot to rob a piece of wood off the stock?
Usually in the inside of the stock.
The barrel channel or something?
Oh, possibly. Better off probably. You usually want to look for you're looking for a longer piece, someplace that's not going to affect the reinforcement of the stock or anything. But like I say, it depends on the design of the gun where you want to be able to rob it from. But
or a donor stock.
Or a donor stock.
Yeah.
And I've done it both ways. But when you're doing that, and as you pick out a piece of wood, you look for a color that's going to match it. And then when you cut out that piece to go in as a patch, you want to be sure that the grain is oriented the same way as the original. Once it's done, then what the best thing to do is where the piece is missing, and usually it'll be on the edge, like on the edge of a barrel channel. I know I've done a couple that way. Just a big splinter off of it. First thing I'll do is I'll true that up. Just take a big flat file and get that broken surface as perfectly flat as I can. And then I cut out a donor piece, make sure it's plenty big enough, a little bigger, and then get the surface that's supposed to orient the grain right, and then plane that surface so you have 2 perfectly flat plane surfaces, so you have a perfect mated finish. And this is real important. Then again, the simple carpenter's wood glue clamped in place, let it dry thoroughly, and then you can use either chisels or sandpaper depending on how much the excess wood sticks out, and just sand off what don't belong until you're down to the original contours of the gun again.
Now, sometimes people talk about using sawdust mixed with the glue to accomplish something similar to that. What's going on there?
That doesn't really work for repairs as well, because once you mix the sawdust with the glue, it takes on a whole different color. And again, if it was a very small place, like on the border, once you've glued a broken stock together and it's just fine little chip lines on the edge, it'd probably work all right for that.
But it's not going to take oil the same way that surrounding would with the glue mixed in?
If it's oil, right, the glue is not going to absorb the oil at all. And sometimes the glue, depending on the type of glue, just automatically makes that wood dust so dark that it doesn't fit in. Unless it happens to run with the grain and looks like a piece of grain and is about the size, right size, it sometimes can work. It's a judgment call there.